100.1 FM and AM 1020 KDKA. It's Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause. Talk, listen, and speak to the region's most influential leaders. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause.
As we come on the air tonight with Today in Pittsburgh Labor and broadcast to you on KDKA 1020 AM, the sights and sounds, I'm going to take you back to Wednesday night, Wednesday, April 19th. Use your theater of the mind and listen in for just a second.
Scabs! 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 What do we want? What do we want it? What do we want? What do we want it?
That chaos that you were listening to, and I wanted to play it for you, the listening audience, so I could bring you in to what was happening Wednesday night at the Post Gazette. There was a lot of activity taking place. Kristen, who was a CWA Staff Representative, was there Wednesday night. She's my special guest today to kick off Today in Pittsburgh Labor as we broadcast to you on KDKA 100.1 FM, 1020 AM. Kristen, welcome to Today in Pittsburgh Labor, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe.
Tell me, Kristen, what was happening at the Post Gazette location on Wednesday night.
Certainly. So about 40 strikers were picketing across the Post Gazette distribution center to delay the newspapers from going out. And there was workers from across the country attending a CWA health and safety conference that is led by the United Steelworkers. And we were walking the line to support our brothers and sisters at the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. And we started at 10:15 p.m. and just walked back and forth. We had our music playing, we had our signs, and we had a real strong showing of solidarity and really making sure that nobody was crossing the line until these workers get a contract. As you know, these workers have been negotiating a contract since 2017, and the News Guild of Pittsburgh have been fighting hard to get a good contract. Pittsburgh Post Gazette unlawfully declared an impasse in negotiations, and an unfair labor practice strike started 183 days from when we were on the picket line.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I was going to chime in there just for the benefit of the listening audience here on KDKA who may not know or may not understand the depth of the details. The 5 different unions all working at the Post Gazette officially went out on strike in what was October of 2022. So as you mentioned, Kristen, 183 days. So you're north of 6 months now of actually being out on strike and no progress taking place from the side of the Post Gazette. There's a lot of negotiating going on this side, on the side of the workers, sometimes negotiating against themselves, but nothing happening on the other side. So take us, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, I don't want to disrupt your train of thought. So bring us into what happened. The police arrived, there was lots of activity. Talk about it.
Yeah, so the police arrived, and they parked their cars along the street, and they made a very strong showing by putting their cars across the line and parking it into the parking lot of the distribution center. And they lined up, had their lights going, and we're watching the strikers for about an hour. And, around 11:22 p.m., the police decided that was the time they were going to break our line, and they split the line right in the middle and pushed and moved every one of the striking workers to the side to allow the scabs to cross the picket line, and we weren't going to be moved easily, but we weren't going to do anything violent as well. The police were physically pushing us with their hands. One officer approached me and was pushing me with his hands. And I, told him to stop because he was assaulting me. And he brought out his baton, and he had his baton. He had both hands in his baton, holding it horizontally and pushing it into my chest. He pushed me so hard that he knocked me down on the ground. My brothers and sisters behind me were there to lift me up and make sure that I was okay. But I've never seen police do this kind of violence at a nonviolent protest or a picket. This kind of response was just incredibly wrong of the Pittsburgh Police Department to do.
And Kristen, just for clarity, and then I want to come back to the interaction where you were pushed there, but just for clarity, when you say spreading the line or stopping or dividing the line, help the listening audience understand what that means. It's a peaceful picket. We've all seen them. Everybody has watched pickets. They're marching or walking in unison, very peaceful. And then the disruption was to separate that or to stop that?
Correct. So when you are marching a picket line, you do so in a lawful manner. And, we weren't blocking any traffic. We were in a public space of walking back and forth the apron of the distribution center. We were holding our signs. We were chanting that we want a fair contract now. And we were listening to labor songs on a radio. Some folks had whistles. But when you march in a line, you march together in unison to not break that chain of solidarity. And when the police came in, they came into a formation right into the center and developed a line of police, and they pushed half of my brothers and sisters to one side of the apron and pushed the other half to the other side to make way for the scabs to cross the picket line.
We're talking
and
with
they did so violently. They were pushing not just me, but they were pushing other brothers and sisters on the picket line.
We're talking with Kristen Affirm, who is a CWA Staff Representative. We're having conversation with Kristen about the incident that occurred on Wednesday evening in front of the Post Gazette. The workers, as we've talked about on this show today in Pittsburgh Labor, as we broadcast to you on KDKA 1020 AM, have been out on strike going back to October, and the contract goes back a lot longer than that, back to 17, as Kristen had mentioned. It isn't unusual for workers on strike to picket. It's their right to picket. Was there an indication as to why this night, Kristen, turned into what happened?
I'm honestly not sure why the police acted the way they did. Management has their own private security to send a message to the picketers. They'd rather spend money on that. They had their thugs out there video recording and trying to intimidate the striking workers on their side. We paid no mind to those folks. We just want a fair contract for these workers. This country was built on the backs of labor and the working folks. Well, we deserve a fair contract. Every worker out there deserves a good contract, living wages and health care and appropriate times off. And just having that terms and condition in the union contract is so important. We must fight to preserve that. You don't get to heaven by breaking a strike or by busting a union. It doesn't happen that way. We need to support these workers and all workers in the union.
Kristen Affirm joining us here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor, recounting again the events from Wednesday night. We have comments coming up from ACLC President Darrin Kelly to put another perspective on his reaction to the events from Wednesday night. And then a little bit later on in the program, we're going to spend the back half hour of the program of Today in Pittsburgh Labor, and we're going to introduce you and talk a lot about unionprogress.com. It is the strike paper from the workers who are on strike. If you're not familiar with it, you'll learn a lot about it on this show. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J. Doc and Krause as we broadcast to you on KDKA 100.1 FM. 10:20 a.m. Kristen, thank you so much for taking time to share your story about not only Wednesday night, but your support and your continued support for all of the workers who continue to walk in solidarity as they hope and fight for a new contract. Kristen, thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Joe. When we fight, we win. In solidarity to all workers.
All right, good stuff. That's Kristen Affirm. We'll take a commercial break. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor on KDKA.
We are going on strike because of unfair labor practices where the company literally canceled the health care.
Being a mom on strike and being a single mom on strike to 2 young kids, it's very nerve-wracking, a little bit stressful. I'm doing my best to look at it as everything will work out, and I gotta just trust the situation, but it's very nerve-wracking.
I'm a mailer in the mailroom, been an employee here for 28 years. I'm a third-generation employee. Between my grandpa, my dad, and me, we have close to, if not more than 100 years of loyal employment with this company. You can call the Post Gazette and tell them you do not want to have a paper delivered.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J. Doc and Krause as we broadcast to you on KDKA. We're here every week on 100.1 FM and 1020 AM, and we thank everybody for tuning in and listening to Today in Pittsburgh Labor. Special thanks to Kristen Affirm, the CWA Staff Representative, who was on the scene on Wednesday night in front of the Post Gazette building where the story unfolded. A normal nightly routine with the workers marching in solidarity turned and got ugly on Wednesday night. We got Kristen's perspective because she was there on the ground. We have a call into the mayor of Pittsburgh, Mayor Gainey, and we hope to get Ed Gainey on one of the upcoming shows. I did mention ACLC President, which is the Allegheny Fayette Central Labor Council President, Darrin Kelly, released a statement following the actions of Wednesday night, and I'm going to quote him directly. Was hoping to get Darrin Kelly on, but in the absence of him saying it, I'm going to actually read verbatim from the statement from the Labor Council President, Darrin Kelly. The incident last night was just the latest proof of what we've been saying for weeks. This conflict is escalating every single day, and it will continue to escalate until someone intervenes and forces the Post Gazette and the Block family to negotiate in good faith. Still quotes from Darrin Kelly. Our brothers and sisters from the News Guild, the Teamsters, and CWA keep going back to the table only to find the Blocks smirking back at them and saying, take it or leave it. They refuse to negotiate, and they sit back and laugh as chaos ensues. Third quote, third paragraph, third quote from President Darrin Kelly. We've seen multiple fights between scabs and striking workers. We've seen pepper spray deployed against striking workers. And we've seen people almost get run over by trucks. This cannot continue. This is 2023, not 1892. We've done our part and gone to the table time and time again. Now we need someone to step in immediately and force the blocs to negotiate in good faith before someone gets seriously hurt, unquote. Those are the exact quotes, the three statements from Labor Council President Darrin Kelly following the incident that occurred on Wednesday night outside of the Post Gazette. And again, special thanks to Kristen, Affirm, a CWA Staff Representative who was on location. If you go to unionprogress.com, you'll see some of the posts, video posts from Wednesday night. There are multiple video posts that were pushed out. Unionprogress.com is the strike paper where the interim editor, Bob Batz Jr., is going to join me on the other side of the break. We're going to spend the last two segments of this show today in Pittsburgh Labor talking about unionprogress.com. It is an incredible digital paper for you to get news, and it is worth familiarizing yourself with unionprogress.com. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J. and Krause as we broadcast to you tonight on KDKA 100.1 FM, 1020 AM. As we go to the break, I want to emphasize one of the three bullet points that were listed in ACLC President Darrin Kelly's press release following the incident that occurred in front of the Post Gazette building. Our brothers and sisters from the News Guild, this is a quote, our brothers and sisters from the News Guild, the Teamsters, and CWA keep going back to the table, only to find the blocs smirking back at them and saying, take it or leave it. They refuse to negotiate, and they sit back and laugh as chaos ensues. Statement words from Labor Council President Darrin Kelly. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J. and Krause. I'm Joe Krause, broadcasting to you on KDKA on the other side of the break. Unionprogress.com. What is it? Who's responsible for it? And what does it mean? Back in a moment.
Pittsburgh is a union town, so when the owners of the Post Gazette hire out-of-town lawyers to try to break our unions, we don't back down. Workers at the Pittsburgh Post Gazette are on strike, and we need your support. We're the ones who design, print, and distribute the paper, sell ads, handle accounts, and create Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism. We help our neighbors stay informed day in and day out, but we haven't had a raise in over 15 years, and the owners of the paper, Block Communications, illegally cut our health care. We deserve better. We deserve respect. Please keep our strike strong and show the millionaire Block family we're not alone. If you subscribe to the paper, cancel your subscription. If you read stories online, don't visit the site until the strike is resolved. Support our strike. Drop the Post Gazette. Visit ppgstrike.org.
Paid for by the Communications Workers of America.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J. and Krause. Glad to be here on KDKA 1020 AM and glad to be back for another week. Shout out to our growing listening audience here that continues to tune in to Today in Pittsburgh Labor. If you're new to the program and you're tuning in for the very first time tonight on KDKA, you are going to start to educate you you on what's happening with the strike regarding the Post Gazette workers and the owners of the publication Block Communication. If you have been following today in Pittsburgh Labor and you have been listening to the show on a weekly basis, first, thank you very much for doing that. And secondly, you know from the conversations that we've had over the last 4 to 6 weeks, we've covered this strike from top to bottom. And what we've really tried to do, the purpose of the show, is to educate you, educate the public, and help you understand what this strike is all about and what are the real details. It's one thing to sit and listen and hear about a strike. It's another to understand the details. And that is where, or that is what we have tried to do. Now, tonight on Today in Pittsburgh Labor, we're going to take a little bit of a different spin to start the show. Bob Batz Jr. is going to join us. Bob is the interim editor of the strike paper, the Union Progress strike paper. And I'll bring Bob in just a moment, but I want to start to educate the public about the Union Progress strike paper, the interim paper that was created and that is executed on a daily basis by Bob Batz Jr., who is the interim editor, and he joins us now on Today in Pittsburgh Labor. Bob, thank you so much for coming on, sir.
Yes, Rosie, thank you for having me. I'm a fan of the show. I've listened to them all, and it's fun to be on it, so I appreciate you having us.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on. So the audience gets an understanding of who is Bob Batz Jr. You're a veteran Pittsburgh journalist, 30-plus year tenure is your claim to fame. You've been a member of the Newspaper Guild for that 30-plus years. And like it or not, you were voted in when the strike began back in October, or when this idea came to fruition as the interim editor of the strike paper. So before we get into some dialogue, talk about that, Bob. Explain what the strike paper is to the listening audience and kind of help them understand what it means, where to get it, and what they'll find when they go there.
Oh, that's great. No, it'll be my pleasure. And it's funny. I don't know whose list I was on at the start of this strike, but and I don't know what I did wrong. But yeah, I went on strike on October 18th of 2022 at noon, and sometime that afternoon I was appointed the interim editor of the Pittsburgh Union Progress, unionprogress.com, or the PUP as we nickname it, and that was to be our strike paper. And we started not from zero, because our labor situation had people at least talking about going on strike years before we finally did, but that's one of the complicated threads of where we're at now. But we still felt like we were starting from zero, and we had our first story published online at unionprogress.com on the 20th. Joe Biden was coming to town to speak about our recently collapsed bridge in Pittsburgh, and that was, I believe, our first big story, and we just kept going from there. It was interesting because you walk out the door on a strike and you don't have you really don't have a website set up. You don't have any money. You don't have anything. But what I knew I had from that first day or two on is I had the best staff, the best journalism staff of any editor of any publication in North America. I had the people. And I remember thinking at the time, my metaphor was that it's like you have a whole bunch of racehorses. These are the best in the business, people who know their beats, experts, artists, craftspeople that really know what they're doing with words and photo images and design. And you can't just have those people just stop doing what they do. You just like if you inherited a bunch of thoroughbred racehorses, you don't just put them in the barn. These horses got to run. And so it was very natural for us to just offer fellow strikers this chance to do what they do and keep their chops, keep their sources, keep their expertise, keep their beats, and more importantly, keep serving the people of Pittsburgh that have, counted on us to do that kind of work. We were withholding our labor over our dispute with our company, but that doesn't mean that we didn't want to do what we do, or that the public didn't want what we do, and so we just kept doing it. The only difference was we weren't getting a paycheck for it.
Bob, this is the one thing that I've discovered through all of the conversations that I've had about this strike and on this program here on KDKA. The writers and the long-tenured workers who are part and who have been part of the Post Gazette are really, really well connected to the city of Pittsburgh, to their communities, and they mean something. The paper means something, but the paper means something because of the people producing the paper. I'm talking about the Post Gazette and the history and the tenure of what it really does mean to the area. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, and that, when we went on strike from day one to what, we're a week past 6 months out as you and I talk. So it's been a long time. But from that very first day when we went on strike, I mean, we cared about the paper. We still care about the paper. We care about the community because that's why we bust our ass to cover the community and cover the news that matters to them and covers the stories that matter to them. Put ourselves in harm's way, covering the kinds of protests that the country has seen in the past couple of years, or the kind of protests that we saw here at the University of Pittsburgh last night, where one of our Union Progress photographers / writer / journalist was covering that event. We really do care about this. You don't do it for money, and you just do it because you care about the community. You're part of the community. You live in it, and those are the kind of things. That's the kind of thing that we used to do while we were working. We did it because we really care about it, and so we still both do it and care about it while we're on strike. This publication is sort of our means to do that. And so, but yeah, a strike sounds really antagonistic, like us versus them, Union Progress versus the Post Gazette. But I think on a big fundamental level, myself and the fellow strikers, we care so much about local news and local journalism, and helping the community understand itself and understanding parts of the community they don't know and they need to understand, knowing what's going on with democracy and elections and et cetera, et cetera. So you can't do this job without feeling that way about the community that you're doing it in. And, we still have that. We're just on strike.
I know 3-4 weeks ago, maybe it's been a little bit longer, maybe it's been a little bit shorter, so excuse me on the reflection into what date it was, but Congressman Summer Lee had joined us here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor, and the one message that I took from Congressman Lee was the importance of the newspaper, especially now, the importance of being able to report and be credible, the importance of being able to report going into a big election year, the importance of the administration and the support that was there for the workers that are out on strike. Thoughts about that statement? I thought it was a pretty strong, telling statement of support.
No, and I heard that episode too, and Congresswoman Lee has been a vocal supporter of a lot of the labor issues that are going on right now, and parts of our struggle, and we certainly we've covered her and some other elected officials in our pages. But yeah, there's a sense to this, and it gets back to what we just started talking about with your last question. This is not just a job for a lot of people. It's a little bit more of a calling. And I think that came into focus for a lot of us precisely because of some of the turmoil that the country has gone through recently and some of the election stuff. climate change, this current labor thing. We know we're not we're on strike at a time when a whole bunch of people are on strike or talking about it or struggling with that. So there's all these things that people that need, credible information and smart information and documented, researched information. And so this is an important job. This is not just a job that you walk away from and say, well, I'm going to go do something else because I'll make more money. Or a lot of the people that are in this field, and especially recently, got kind of a little bit of a juice about how important it is. We know our industry is really struggling in terms of finances, and that readership is off. Papers aren't printing as many days of papers. We know people don't get the paper as much as they used to. But I've been around a while, and it's been nice to see a little bit of that pendulum come back and to see people realize that maybe they missed their paper that closed up or went away or is much diminished, or they get a little older and they want to know what their elected officials are actually doing, and they want someone to be watching City Hall and the other institutions that way. So what we do is important. It's never not been important, and our labor battle is about that as much as it is about the kind of money we make and, how much vacation time we get. There's something really important at stake here, and I'm always impressed by some of my colleagues who they're doing this for that too, and it's really something. It kind of on a bad day, and there's plenty of those in a 6-month long plus strike, that can really keep you going and keeps us all going.
Bob Batz Jr. is our special guest here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor. As we broadcast to you on our home, KDKA 1020 AM. UnionProgress.com is the strike paper. We're going to pause for just a moment. We'll continue on the other side with our conversation with Bob. We'll get into more details about UnionProgress.com. I really want to emphasize and put kind of a highlight on UnionProgress.com. What will you find when you go there? We'll ask Bob when we come back.
Hey, is that?
Yep, the Post Gazette workers' picket line. They're on strike.
Oh, yep, I know. I already canceled my subscription to support the workers, and I am not reading the Post Gazette website either.
Right, me too, and I canceled my business's advertising.
I'd go on strike too if my company cut my health care.
Right, and no raises for 15 years? Crazy.
Yeah, seriously.
Those guys who own the paper are worth millions.
I heard that they hired some out-of-town law firm to negotiate with the workers.
Yeah, I heard they're trying to break the unions.
Doesn't sound like they understand Pittsburgh at all.
Exactly. Pittsburgh is a union town.
Yeah, this place was built on unions.
Yeah, it's about showing respect and doing what's right.
Please keep our strike strong and show the Millionaire Block family we're not alone. Drop the Post Gazette. Visit ppgstrike.org to join us.
Paid for by the
back here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause. J-Doc off again this weekend, but I'm glad I'm here talking with Bob Batz Jr., who is the interim editor. He didn't realize he was signing up to be the interim editor of UnionProgress.com, but his 30 years plus of tenure as a Pittsburgh journalist, a veteran journalist, certainly qualifies him to do so. His hours have increased. The product is fantastic, and we welcome him back into the dialogue. Bob, welcome back, man. Thank you for staying with us through one more segment. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks for saying veteran instead of old, because those are interchangeable. But I'll take veteran.
Yeah, I love it, brother. I like that too, man. And tenure is another good word. You got great.
Exactly.
You've got great tenure. Talk about UnionProgress.com. A lot of listeners out in the KDKA listening audience. Maybe they've never gone to UnionProgress.com. They don't know what they'll find when they go there. Talk about that. Tell them what they'll see.
My pleasure. And again, one thing is it's free. We don't. Our publication is free, and it is on that web address. And we are only online right now. But people who subscribe, which we encourage, get 3 newsletters a week also sent to their inbox. That sort of helps them follow us along, because we publish 7 days a week. around the clock. So you never know when we're going to come up with something. And, we've never, from the very start, we never positioned ourselves as the New York Times or even, a replacement Post Gazette. We're small. We were a startup. Now we're 6 months old, so we're bigger and we're different than we were, but we're still probably a smaller outlet than a lot. But we publish, 5-6 stories a day on a variety of topics. We started out, strike papers are a tradition of newspaper strikes. There just hasn't been a big newspaper strike for so long, or a strike paper, that very early on we got identified as the first strike paper of the digital age. And so it was a lot easier for us to start up in 2 days after we went on strike, because we weren't printing on paper and we didn't have to distribute that way. We could just fire up our site and, write our story, take our photos, and we were off and running as a strike paper. So we always knew we were going to cover our own strike situation, because who better, and actually who else is going to do that? That was one of our sort of channels. We determined that we were going to cover other stories that really mattered to the community. As I was saying earlier in the segment, that's we didn't want to stop doing the important work that we do and that people counted on these people to do, so we wanted to keep doing that. And we also wanted to do stories that were just important to our strikers, our journalists, our experts, our photographers. If something mattered to them, we wanted to make a room for that too, to sort of keep them going and keep their chops and keep them happy. And so we started doing a community news sort of channel, if you will, and a sports news channel that has focused heavily on high school sports in the region, which is, they're as big here as anywhere. Football, basketball. We're into track and field season, and baseball and softball right now, since we're on strike longer than we thought. But there's all kinds of stuff on there. We tend to, as we mature and we get older and, the strike goes on, we tend to try to focus on stories in the community that no one else is telling in Pittsburgh, and we like to go to voices that are maybe not heard as much, neighborhoods where the news trucks don't go. We had the big train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. That was national news. Most listeners will be familiar with that to some extent. And I guess this is a good way to tell you how the union progress rolls, because we're small. We weren't on the scene on day one when day 1, day 2, day 3, when the smoke was billowing out at the train cars. But we did go, and we keep going, and we keep going back. And we talk to people who are thinking about losing their homes, or we talk to people who have lost their businesses, and we talk to people, we listen to people. And so that's where we find ourselves going. We're trying to sort of go to those voices and do those stories that really matter to real people, to our neighbors, and tell those. And so we're still evolving. As we go forward, we're going to continue to try to focus our mission and focus what we do. But it's just classic old school, boots on the ground journalism for your community, and trying to reflect that and help them work through things that matter, whether that's the basketball state playoffs or the upcoming May primary election. That's going to be really big here in Pittsburgh. And so, yeah, that's what we do.
Bob Batz Jr. joining us here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor. One last question, Bob, and then I've got one last question on Union Progress. And again, that website is unionprogress.com. And then I have one more question before we run out of time and I let you go. Last question on talking about unionprogress.com. And I do want I do encourage all of the listeners here on KDKA to check out unionprogress.com. What's the reception been like for the journalists who are covering those stories out in the community, for the reporters that are going to East Palestine? What's it been like? Has it been the same? Is it different for them?
All I'll say, and this drives why we go to the stories that we do, or the events that we do, or the neighborhoods that we do. If you go to a person or a street or a town where they have a story to tell, and you say, "I care about your story and I want you to tell it to me," they're thrilled. and especially if they don't hear from other outlets sometimes. We've had journalists that show up in sometimes unvisited places like a drag bingo event or something like that, and maybe not even want to say that they're there from the Pittsburgh Union Progress. And when that comes out, people cheer because they haven't had a journalist at their event maybe ever, and maybe there might be journalists from some outlets that they don't want to have there because they don't have a good relationship with that outlet. So we find that we get a really great reception from the places that we go. But again, we're not new. So a lot of the people I work with on Union Progress, these are names of people that are known in the community, other veteran / old journalists like Steve Mellon, really good journalists who have Pulitzer Prizes to their name, like Andrew Goldstein and Alexandra Wimley and Torsten O. I mean, we have the journalists. We have these high-powered people, and so some of them need no introduction when they go out into the community. People are happy. They generally are happy, and we may do some stories where you don't want a journalist knocking on your door or calling you. We've done some of those too, and people may not want to talk to us, but they do. They respect us, and they know that we're doing our job as we laid out earlier in the segment. And we've had even people that don't want to talk to a journalist talk to us because they kind of know we're doing our part of our job too. So it's been a very nice reception all in all, and it's much appreciated by us out here on the strike. Yeah,
well stated. Bob Batz Jr. joining us here. One last question for you, Bob, and I appreciate so much the time that you've allocated to me and to the audience here on KDKA. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor. Remove your interim editor hat for a moment. And let's end our dialogue today, our conversation today, with your reflection on how tough it's been to be on strike and to see your colleagues working through the strike. A strike in general, while appearing on the surface to be very uniform, can be very difficult. It can be emotional. It can be challenging. It could create financial instability. Lots of different realities are sometimes realized, and they're not perception, by the way. They're real realities.
I mean, I would just sum it up to say that it sucks. I mean, it just does. There's nothing good about it. But you have to laugh sometimes. I think because I work for the publication and I'm sort of public facing that way, I'll get questions coming in through the POP, as we nickname it, where people will be like, well, I like your publication. It's pretty darn good. How much are you guys getting paid? And I'll just nicely say, well, we're on strike. So we don't get paid. That's the point. I think a lot of people just don't get how strikes work or how labor situations work. And our strike certainly has a long history, and it's very complicated, so it's hard to explain it even if you've lived through it. So there's all those difficulties. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend striking to anyone. It isn't fun. There's a lot of stresses on top of not getting a paycheck, especially since something I'm sensitive to after the 6-month anniversary of just how much work it is for everyone who's on strike. We're putting out a daily publication. Other people are doing health and welfare, trying to work on unemployment, checking in on each other, fundraising, which is a big thing, and Union Progress is part of that to try to raise some money to keep us all going through our Pittsburgh Strikers Fund. That's something you can very easily find on our site, and you can find out how to donate to that. So you got to keep that kind of stuff going. You got to write thank you cards. You want to write thank you cards. You have all this other stuff to do, so it's hard, and it's hard over 6 months. I don't think you'll hear any of us whining about it because this is what we signed up for. This is what we truly believe in because we believe in the job that we'd like to get back to doing and being paid for. But until we can come to that agreement with our employer, we're going to keep doing that job anyway and for free, but for our public and for our readers and for our community. And we just got to hope that some of these other things that we're doing and some of these other legal actions and some continued possible talking between the two parties will get us back to work and doing the same thing, but maybe getting a paycheck for it again too. So, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, but I never doubted that this is where I should be, and I just can't wait to see it come to some kind of resolution.
Bob Batz Jr., veteran Pittsburgh journalist, 30-plus years, interim editor. Go to unionprogress.com. It is worth checking out. That's unionprogress.com. Bob, thanks a million for jumping on today in Pittsburgh Labor. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, and I'll be listening to this when it all comes together. And thank you. I'll see you down the road.
All right, good stuff from Bob Batz Jr. joining us here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor. That's going to do it for this edition of Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause. We thank everyone for tuning in. If you missed any of what we talked about on the program, you can certainly listen to tonight's show on the podcast. Again, the event from Wednesday night, listen to it, understand it, research it, and get yourself educated about what's happening with the Post Gazette workers. That's going to do it for Today in Pittsburgh Labor. On behalf of J-Doc, I'm Joe Krause. See you next time, everybody.